Wanted to share a little anecdote before I jumped in. About 2 years ago, I was asked to make a presentation on behalf of the Rotary Clubs of Champaign and Urbana. And the presentation was to the City of Champaign Community Coalition. If you're familiar with that group, they meet monthly. Tracy Parsons, I think is his last name. He works for the city, coordinates those meetings. And it's really an opportunity for various organizations, folks who are interested in services available to residents here in Champaign County, to be able to hear directly from those leaders about what they're doing, what offers they have for support. And my role was to provide an overview on Rotary. And I spent, 15, 20 minutes talking about Rotary International around the world, in the US, and more specifically about Rotary here in Champaign County. There are, I think, 4 clubs here in Champaign, one in Urbana, one in Savoy. There's about 3,800 Rotarians, that's what their club members are called, Rotarians within central Illinois, and several million around the world. Part of what I wanted to share was about Rotary's activities locally. And one of the things that I touched on in that presentation was a local event coming up in Urbana for MLK Day. And it was at MLK Park in Urbana. And the presentation went well, and I stayed for the remainder of the meeting. I leave the venue and I'm in the parking lot headed to my car, and I hear footsteps coming up behind me rather quickly. I turn and I look, and it's a reporter. I recognize the face, and she also was carrying a microphone. Mr. Whitman, would you be willing to give me an on-camera interview to talk about your presentation? And I said, well, I talked about a lot of things in my presentation. What specifically would you like to know? And she said, well, the MLK event that you referenced in Urbana, if you would talk just a little bit more about that. And for a half second, I thought, what are the pros and cons of me saying yes? And I thought, well, there's always the chance that I might misspeak and provide inaccurate information that would not set well. But I thought the upside was, one, we let more people know about the event. I have an opportunity to talk about Rotary. I have an opportunity to talk about the alignment between Rotary and Dr. King's message. And it also provides an opportunity for people who don't know about Rotary to maybe take an interest to be a part of Rotary, and obviously to be a part of this event. So yes, I did the interview. Interview went well. And I share this with you, not to suggest that you might want to just take on spontaneous opportunities to be interviewed in a parking lot. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I'm pretty comfortable in most situations with reporters. Throughout my career, you're on the phone, you're talking to a reporter asks, well, can I put you on the record? Sure, right? So I'm fairly comfortable with most media interviews, print, broadcast, live, recorded, as long as I know the subject matter and I know the framework, the parameters, right? So I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, you're representing your organization, if you feel that you have enough information to be able to speak about a particular topic and connect with those that you are trying to reach, then there's probably an upside that's greater than the potential downsides. Now, that's not to say that every unplanned, spontaneous request for an interview should be taken, right? You want to make sure that you are not only familiar with what the reporter wants to ask you about, but you are comfortable enough with the messaging that you can use that opportunity to connect with stakeholders that you're trying to reach. The opportunity to do that interview or any other interview is your opportunity to not just connect, but to give some compelling reasons why this is important to your stakeholders, an opportunity for you to differentiate your organization from your competition, direct and indirect competition. But it's also an opportunity for you to make an impression that otherwise may not be readily available via the information that's on a website or through other platforms. The opportunity that I want to share with you today is really about the reality that let's make sure I do this correct. It's a pointer. That's off. That's what I want. This particular quote in particular is often attributed to the U.S. Navy SEALs, if you're familiar. So this elite military force within our fighting men and women in the U.S. and abroad, these are the elite of the elite. And to be honest, I have no idea whether this quote actually has any relationship to Navy SEALs or not, but it's applicable, right? Navy SEALs have this reputation of being very good at what they do, very selective in who they allow to be called Navy SEALs, and the demanding requirements to become a Navy SEAL disqualify the vast majority of those who try it. We don't rise to the occasion because of the moment in any aspect of what we do. Generally, it's because of the training, or in this case, our preparation. So I think this quote is particularly applicable given that as each of you are engaged in your respective roles, there will be opportunities for you to either respond to an inquiry or you seek to have opportunities to engage with media because it's an opportunity for you to engage with your stakeholders. So preparation is always key, whether, again, it's a spontaneous opportunity or it's something that is planned and more strategic. So I wanted to cover the objectives for today. One of them, I want to introduce media relations strategies, tactics, resources, and protocol for you to consider implementing or enhancing what you already have within your organization. I suspect for most of you, there is already someone, maybe it's you, within your organization that, oh, that's the go-to person. If media calls, that's the person. And I would argue that that is the most appropriate protocol to have in place, but it may be beneficial for you to have other resources and strategies, tactics, and guidelines in place to manage those opportunities as they present. For example, your goals and objectives within your organization as it relates to media. Who are the stakeholders that you're trying to reach and why? The media provides a conduit, a platform or platforms for you to be able to do that. Knowing who you want to reach and why helps you identify those channels that will help you achieve those objectives. Media protocol and management, again, the incoming as well as those proactive opportunities where you're trying to engage media, there needs to be some guideline known within your organization that folks follow. You don't want anyone who answers the phone or anyone who is approached by a reporter to feel that they have the latitude to be able to grant an interview or provide information that may not necessarily be representative of your organization. We'll talk a little bit about media pitching, media interview, prep and execution, press kits, crisis and issues management, and just a word on media interview, prep and execution. This is, it's a little bit of an art, it's a little bit of a science, but I would argue that most media, print, broadcast, digital, have an agenda. They have a purpose and objective. They are in the business of generating and reporting news, but they are also in the business of making money. And they know as much about their audience as anybody. So they are trying to connect with their audience by the content that they share in their reporting. So in our pitching, we want to be cognizant of that, right? So are we reaching out to potential media outlets that have a potential interest in our organization? If so, what are those things that might resonate with them in order to pique their interest? Media interview is the same. Your approach to an opportunity to grant an interview should be through the lens, what do I have to say that's relevant to the stakeholders that I'm trying to reach? What sets my organization apart from every other organization that's kind of offering the same goods and services? Press kits, simple as it sounds, back in the day when we actually assembled kits that we would hand to reporters as they would come into the organization for an event or for interviews, executive bios, executive summaries, product information, press releases, those kinds of things. It simply helps the reporter or the news organization get the facts straight. Instead of having to go find it, we provide it to them. Now, most of that is always done online as opposed to a physical kit. Crisis and issues management, you know, the reality of life is bad things happen to good people. So our ability to be prepared in the event of a crisis in our respective organizations is absolutely critical. What maybe a decade or a few decades ago wouldn't be a blip on the news radar now becomes something viral. Because there are so many platforms out there for people to share information, makes crisis and issues management critically important. A couple of disciplines that I want to make sure that I touch on while I'm here: marketing, communications, and public relations. For, I think, the vast majority of people that I have engaged with over the years in various capacities, most people have a pretty good understanding of marketing. To a lesser extent, communications and public relations. Well, aren't they all kind of doing the same thing? No. And again, as a leader within your respective organizations, you not only want to know what these disciplines do and what they don't, but you also want to know how those disciplines can help you manage your messaging, your engagement with media, your engagement with your own employees and stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They do different things and they complement each other, but it's really important, in my opinion, no matter the size of your organization, not only that you understand, but you're able to leverage those disciplines to your advantage. We'll talk about some of the resources that are available, many of them here at the library, beyond today's workshop. And if we have an opportunity, time permitting, which I suspect we will, we'll talk a little bit about the October workshop that's being planned. I shared this in the February workshop. This quote is from, I believe, 1962. Phil Graham was, at the time, the publisher for the Washington Post. He was speaking to Newsweek correspondents. And this quote, "News is the first rough draft of history," is as true today as it was in 1963. One of the key takeaways for me in this quote is rough draft. Every news organization then and every news organization now balances at least two things. One, timeliness of what they report with accuracy of what they report. Virtually every news organization wants to break news, but it is just as important that they get it right. And we all know from our own experience as news consumers, they don't. So again, as business leaders, as community leaders, it is our responsibility to make sure that the information that they get from us about our respective organizations is accurate, to help them do a better job of creating that first draft of history. I also share this slide, and I'll share a few more about the precipitous decline of the traditional news organizations, not only in the United States, but quite frankly around the world. This one shows the revenue decline for newspaper publishers, magazines, direct mail publishers, and something that is now becoming quite antiquated, videotape and disc rentals. I don't see this trend changing. Then the latest numbers there from 2020, 6 years ago, and we've seen an exponential shift in digital just within the last few years that has only exacerbated this decline for folks who are in that business. All of us are probably familiar with or have heard about newspapers, some of them local, most of them local, but also some national and international publications that have pulled back their reporting. They have shut down bureaus, they have laid off staff, and in some cases they have stopped producing a physical newspaper altogether and have switched to online if they are able to keep viewers behind a paywall to get people to pay for their content. But it becomes increasingly difficult when there are so many options out there today. The chart on the left, the graph on the left shows newspaper circulation. This is from the 1940s, again, through 2020, so fairly recent. It's a waterfall. The chart on the right focuses mainly on the network evening newscasts. And I use this particular chart because generally that's where you get the most viewership for the national broadcast news channels. In my opinion, the other platforms for news from the networks, the morning news has largely become entertainment. And many of the traditional broadcast media outlets are using more and more of their content online. And again, a lot of it, I just realized NBC, I think, has a daily news program. It's cheaper to produce than a lot of the other content that they've had on historically, but they're not getting the viewers that they generally like to get from their daily newscasts. So we know that the folks, are not simply walking away from news. The shift is to digital. So we all have one of these, cell phones or a laptop or some other device where we have access to news and information and entertainment literally at our fingertips. This is the challenge for media organizations because it is difficult to compete not only with the access but with the ability to provide up-to-date, relevant content the way people want it. I'm old enough to remember when there were two newspapers generated. You get a morning paper, you get an evening newspaper. Those days are long gone. The ability to be able to pick up your phone and pretty much figure out what's going on anywhere in the world at any time based on your interest is a difficult business model to compete against. So if you are a business leader, this has implications for how you engage. I won't read through all of these, but just the headlines. The communications ecosystem, the news gathering, news reporting ecosystem has shifted dramatically, and that means that as business leaders, you have to take more of an active role in how you engage, to be more informed about not just who's reporting, but how you're going to get the information that you want out through those various channels. Using data and analytics helps. Understanding social, streaming, influencers, niche platforms helps because now, as opposed to NBC, CBS, and ABC, Washington Post, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, now you have to think in a more narrowly targeted way to get your messaging out. Reputation in this environment becomes far more fragile. I talked a little bit about the nature of something that wouldn't make the news a few years ago. Someone loses their temper at a Taco Bell ends up not only streaming on or trending on social media platforms, but might even make the evening news. Data-driven storytelling becomes essential. We, as humans, since the beginning of time, we love stories. So it is in our best interest as we think about our content and how we share it, to think about how we share that in a story that is relevant and connects with people who might be interested. Marketing shifts from broadcast to precision. I talked a little bit about that. And then trust is harder to earn, largely because there are so many different channels, so many different platforms. We tend to gravitate to our respective echo chambers, and we rarely like to take on information that may not be aligned with our beliefs or ideology, which makes our conversations about politics and a lot of other things rather difficult. So for nonprofits, that means it's an opportunity for nonprofits to engage with their respective stakeholders without the gatekeepers. And I would argue for business leaders, for nonprofits, we are in a better position to be our own content generators, our own media platforms, and our own resource to be able to connect with those stakeholders that we are trying to reach. Competition is fierce, again, because of so many channels. Fundraising becomes digital first. I will argue that in many cases, folks who are looking to play around in the digital space might say, well, we need a website, we need our social media platforms, we need all these things that people are gravitating to today. You launch and leave, meaning you launch the website, you launch the social media platforms, and then you don't update them for 6 months. I've seen it. So the value of being in that space becomes of very little value if you don't keep the information current and relevant. Data literacy becomes mission critical. Can't say it enough. So the more we understand the data, where our stakeholders are getting their news and information from, what platforms they value and trust the most, gives us a roadmap to be able to make more informed decisions about how we engage. I had a friend of mine just a few months ago asked me about search engine optimization. So I gave him my point of view on that, which, the idea is you maximize your organization's profile higher in a search on your particular industry. The higher your brand or organization comes up in that search, the better, right? Great idea. The problem is you don't always reach the people that you're trying to reach. So it's great if you're number one on Google and you're number one on Yahoo and all the other social platforms, but if you're not engaging with the folks that you're trying to reach, there's very little value in spending a lot of time and valuable resources on search engine optimization. So a lot of this also applies to us as news consumers. There's greater access, but more confusion. There is greater speed, but there's less depth. We see less and less news features because, we just don't have the capacity to read, 4 or 5 pages of content about this particular topic. Fragmentation of shared reality. Again, we kind of operate in our respective echo chambers. And convenience and personalization becomes key in how we share this content for the folks that we're trying to reach. So, quickly, 5 takeaways from the first workshop. All leadership and brand communications messaging via any channel needs to be clear, concise, and compelling. The greater the clarity, the less likelihood of confusion or misunderstanding about what it is you're trying to say and what it is that you want people to think, feel, or do about your organization. What is news is subjective, largely because of this shift to a digital dominant platform. We decide what news is as opposed to the editors or the editorial board or the respective news organization. Traditional news media landscape shift from print to digital. Leverage research and data, insights to target and amplify stakeholder engagement. Can't reiterate this enough. The more we can understand our stakeholders, the more likely we are to connect with the folks that we're trying to connect with. Targeted, personalized, strategic engagement deepens brand trust, loyalty, and prompts action. As you think about these strategies, you want to think about what is the desired outcome. What are those metrics that validate that you've achieved the goals that you set? Is it about awareness? Is it about engagement? Is it about increasing investors, donors, customers, traffic to your website? The more we can be specific about what it is we are trying to do, the more we have resources and information that will allow us to pick and choose the various channels, platforms, messaging, branding, iconography, and those kinds of things that most resonate with the people and stakeholders that we're trying to reach. Small group, but I want to pose the question to each of you. Don't pick up your phone. How many marketing messages do you think we are exposed to in North America on a daily basis? Rough number.
500.
500? Anybody think it's less than that?
No. Like 1,000?
1,000?
Yeah.
Anybody agree with that? Disagree? How about 2,000? You think it's that many? The average in the US today is 6,000 marketing messages a day for the average adult. 6,000. That number increases up to 10,000 if you spend a lot of time on one of these, because of banner ads and pop-up ads and a lot of the digital content that we just kind of block out, don't even pay attention to. 6,000 to 10,000, depending on your digital use on a daily basis. So you might be thinking, Bill, I want to get my organization out there and I want to use media to do that. And there's this shift from traditional print and broadcast now to digital. And then there are all these challenges with so many different platforms. And there are challenges with, making sure that I do the research and all these analytics. And then you have these algorithms that I can't even control. Where do I even start? So here's where we start. Again, goals and objectives. What is the purpose of your engagement with media, and who are you trying to reach and why? What metrics can you use to validate or confirm your success? Research and refine. So the more you are able to understand those goals and the purpose of those objectives, research can help validate, right? So what you may have thought about what is most compelling about your organization, your goods, your services, may shift based on the feedback that you learn in the research. Differentiation is key. Because there are so many channels, because there are so many platforms, and again, in many cases, because we like to operate in our various lanes and follow those feeds that are of interest to us, it is difficult to identify those niche platforms and niche markets where we can connect with the folks that we're trying to reach. But this is why your unique messaging is important, because we can go out and put up billboards and do all kinds of things to get attention, but if you have attention but no awareness, then you have no likelihood of intent to purchase. If you have awareness and you have recall, but you don't have intent to purchase, then you're still not ahead. But if you have awareness, you have recall, and you have intent to purchase, because you are reaching the folks who are most interested in what you have to offer, then you are most likely to have a connection and an opportunity to connect with those particular audiences. Strategy and tactics are key. As we all know, they are not the same thing. Your strategies need to align with your goals and objectives. Your tactics simply support them. Prepare, test, and engage. I cannot encourage this enough. The more you engage, the more you practice, the more you prepare, the more comfortable you are with the outlying parking lot interview with WCIA. I'll let you absorb the quote here for a second. So as I thought about resources, this is a book that I have read several times. It's only a couple of years old. The author is Rory Sutherland. Mr. Sutherland is the vice chair of Ogilvy Advertising in London. He's probably one of the most vocal and, I would say, unique marketers that I have run across in my 30 years in the business. Because his approach to most marketing campaigns and strategies is counterintuitive. And I think one argument that Mr. Sutherland would make is, if you are doing the same things that your competitors are doing, meaning you're doing the research, you're doing the marketing analytics, you are doing the brand and product testing, and you're doing all these things, then you're likely to get the same information that your competitors are getting. So if you're going to simply repeat what your competitors are doing, how are you getting ahead? So his thinking is a bit counterintuitive, and he's come up with these, I would call them rules of alchemy, right? So alchemy, the idea that you could take something of this value and turn it into something of greater value. And these are from his book. The opposite of a good idea can also be a good idea. It might be a bad idea, but it also may be a good idea. The opportunity to understand the motivation behind our decisions, our purchase decisions, why we choose product A over product B, is largely subconscious, not necessarily a conscious decision. Don't design for average speaks to the idea of following your competitors or simply doing what your competitors do. This idea that it doesn't pay to be logical when everyone else is being logical pretty much applies the same theory. One of the quotes that I really like from Mr. Sutherland is, "Logic is overrated, charm wins." Intuitively, I think most of us, if you see product A and you see product B, and product A is significantly higher priced than product B, we think, well, product A must be better. It's not inherently true, but our minds are somewhat conditioned to navigate and at least use some intuitive logic to think, well, okay, if it's more expensive for a reason, so therefore it must be better. It's not always true. Free must be bad. Free means there's something wrong with it, it's defective. I don't even want it. Why are you giving it away? So the idea behind thinking differently about how we engage, how we position our goods and services, I think is a interesting and potentially valuable exercise. Dare to be trivial. If there were a logical answer, we would have found it already. I think that is true of most everything that we engage in these days. I touched on the peso model in February, and I want to revise that a little bit. If you recall, peso is paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media. So paid, largely, advertising, marketing. So I'm going to pay to get this ad that I want to place in a local newspaper. You have to pay for that. Earned media is largely the province of public relations. So as a public relations practitioner, I'm out there talking to reporters, I am engaging with community leaders and stakeholders, and we're going to host this event, we're going to partner with this organization, and lo and behold, I get media to come out and cover that event. I'm not paying for it. It's earned. Shared media simply means I'm going to partner with another organization that might have something that complements what my organization offers. So it might be their social media platforms that we can partner on what we post and activities that we can share. Owned media is simply that. It's owned. It's my blog, it's my newsletter, it's my internal communications, it's my website, it's my social media platforms. These I control. These I have complete control over the content, the frequency, and how often I update that information via my platforms. The benefit of understanding all this and leveraging all this is not that you use all of them at once, but you use them because they have different benefits. And in some cases, you may only want 2 or 3 of these because it helps you connect with the folks that you're trying to reach. Very little of this costs you any money. Paid media, yes, absolutely. And I'm not anti-marketing, anti-advertising. I have held the title a number of times as Chief Marketing Officer. Marketing has its value. It is largely about revenue generation. But if you can do earned media for free, if you can do shared media for free, if you can do owned media for free, why wouldn't you? If that ad is in the paper or on the radio or even online and it generates some awareness, but tomorrow it's gone, it has less value than the way you engage through shared, earned, and owned media. These aren't textbook, but these are 2 infographics that I found recently online, and I think they fairly well represent the different disciplines that I touched on earlier. Public relations, and I've been in this business again for 30 plus years, is largely the domain of air traffic controller. So you have the internal messaging, you have the external messaging, you have stakeholders, you have event management. So public relations makes sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, marketing and operations and other aspects within your organization, so that there is consistency in the messaging. You also have leadership communications, you have media relations, and you have other disciplines which generally fall within public relations. Marketing, I say kindly, is the hammer. I'm going to beat you into submission by showing you my ad. And then I'm going to show you again. And then I'm going to show you again. That's why we see the same ad when we watch our favorite news programs multiple times. They are trying to beat you into submission with awareness. Again, awareness, recall, intent to purchase. Communications is more about the finesse. Meaning, yes, there's the internal, yes, there's the external communications and all these various stakeholder groups that need to be informed, but they also need to be informed in the proper format, in the proper sequence, and by the most appropriate stakeholders within your organization. PR is often largely the group that is most responsible for reputation management, crisis and issues management. PR largely has a bad rep, in my opinion, of being spin doctors, the folks who can't answer a reporter's question directly. They have to twist their response to the messages that they want to convey. Again, public relations, communications are often the folks who manage media. Any other points in here I want to share with you? So, again, nothing against marketing. I think it's highly valuable. I've worked for major brands that, they are in many instances household names around the world because of the marketing departments. But marketing gets you in the door, and it may generate revenue, but it doesn't necessarily bring you back, right? So you have to deliver on that marketing message. You have to deliver on that marketing promise. Public relations, media relations, communications promotes a deeper relationship with those stakeholders that you're trying to reach through marketing. In my opinion, it is more genuine, more authentic. In many cases, the marketing is simply trying to, one, get your attention, right? So you may not even be interested, but that's a funny commercial, but I'm not interested in their product. So there's no net gain there. But the opportunity for public relations to be able to appeal to you either on an irrational level or an emotional level or a need has far more value than a one-time purchase. And with public relations communications, you also have the opportunity to turn those customers into loyal customers and advocates for your brand. So a few resources that we want to touch on. I've talked a lot about research, data, and insights, identifying your key stakeholders, your preferred media platforms, metrics, opportunities to engage. One I haven't talked a lot about is gaining stakeholder feedback. So as you engage in pulling your strategy together, doing the research, and putting your plan together, there is value in then going back to those stakeholders and seeking their feedback. I do that with a number of clients because it helps validate the work that you've already put in. And you may find that what you thought was the message or the brand that represents your organization, for some, it might not be as compelling as maybe you think it is or you believe it is. Your media planning, identify media and influencers. We live in the domain where that's a thing now. We have to be cognizant of who are the credible voices out there on this particular thing that is relevant to my organization. Your internal media contacts, there should be, in my opinion, a designated spokesperson. That ought not be the CEO or the executive director or the department head, but someone who is well-versed in media engagement, media relations, that they can have a conversation with a reporter on the phone or in person or in a parking lot and feel comfortable having that conversation and then be able to discern, is this something that we want to engage in or not? And who needs to know within my organization? Do I need to let the department head know, my manager know? Does the CEO need to know? There has to be that protocol, so this person, your internal media contact, and often your spokesperson needs to be that gatekeeper. I talked a little bit about press kits, media protocol, talked a little bit about that already. Make sure that as you are going through this process, you're also looking at your online presence and how it aligns or doesn't align with your media relations strategy. Your brand and your personal online presence. Media training, I couldn't tell you honestly how many folks I have gone through media training with, provided that training. And I would argue that the vast majority of them would rather do virtually anything else than do an interview. I get it. For some people, it is anxiety-inducing. Public speaking, anxiety-inducing. Giving a speech, anxiety. I don't want to do that. Someone else can do that. Training increases your level of comfort. the more you're able to sit in a mock interview, and you go through prep before you get to that point, but with the camera on you, recording every word, every facial expression, your response to an unpleasant question. Helps, one, make you aware of those things, right, the verbal as well as the nonverbal, but it provides you with an opportunity to be cognizant of that and then be able to make adjustments through the training. And that really only happens through the training. I know of a number of people who, at senior levels, think, I got it. I can do this. Don't worry about it. Don't need the training. And they often come back and say, well, okay, can we do the training? Sometimes your overconfidence can be your worst enemy. Internal and external key messages, all of those things, again, make sure the internal aligns with the external. Best practices, a lot of this is fairly simple and straightforward, but you have to be aware of these things in order to be able to implement them. I would argue that if you are in the business of trying to promote your organization, you ought to know what media locally and potentially nationally, if your business is doing business nationally, what media outlets and what specific reporters should you have a relationship with. That you could pick up the phone and call them to say, hey, just want to make you aware of this thing that we're doing. Not trying to pitch a story, but just want to keep you in the loop because they might be interested. The more you can be proactive with those reporters allows you to then build trust and credibility because they are more likely to call you when they hear of something or they have an idea or they want to pitch something to you. They're more likely to call you than someone else. And it is always best to be open, honest, and accessible. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to give an interview every time that request comes along, but the more you can be a resource to reporters, the more valuable you are to the reporter and more valuable the reporter and their respective outlet is to you and your organization. We've touched on media training. Internal and external messaging is key. Stakeholder engagement, what is a stakeholder? Well, that's any individual or organization that has a direct or indirect interest in your business or your organization. Investors, employees, donors, volunteers, the community, might be regulators. We all have stakeholders, whether we think about it or not, and more often than not, they have an opinion about your organization. So the more we understand who they are and how we can engage with them can make those organizations and entities also ambassadors to what we do. In my career, I've often, as the chief communications officer, I was often the person that had to go into DC and talk to those stakeholder groups that didn't necessarily have a positive relationship with my organization. They'd issue press releases about our products, about alleged chemicals in those products, or about what they thought were unsafe or harmful practices within our organization. So, was it a big deal for a multinational organization? Well, it's kind of a thorn in the side because in many instances they generated news. And when there is an opportunity to correct misinformation, that can help mitigate a lot of that negativity. So again, understanding who your stakeholders are, the positive ones and the less so positive ones, and the engagement strategy that you might want to employ to engage with those folks is absolutely critical. Talked a lot about research, data, and insights. Haven't said much about brand and message testing, but it can be extremely valuable, again, validating what you believe to be true about your organization. Using metrics helps validate your beliefs and your plan. Prioritize stakeholder engagement and active listening. Seek feedback and incorporate it where it makes sense in your planning. Another great resource, and I think this book is available here at the library in addition to Alchemy. Dr. Robert Cialdini is a behavioral psychologist. He's not a marketer. He's, I think, a professor emeritus at Arizona State University. This book is maybe a couple of years old. It is, as the title implies, about influence. Again, not about marketing, but the human psychology behind the decisions that we make. So if you are, again, thinking about why a consumer chooses product A over product B, why if I go to Amazon today and the product that I'm looking for is unavailable, but I see 5-star reviews on this other product that I've never purchased, I'm more inclined to purchase that product even though I've never heard of it, because it seems that they've done my homework. Someone else has already verified that this is good. 5-star review must be good, right? And the product that I want isn't available, so I'm more inclined to go with the crowd, so to speak. So Dr. Cialdini's levers of influence, and these are, again, outlined in his book, Reciprocation. We like to give back to people who give to us. We like people who we like, and organizations we like. It's easier to do business and have relationships with people and organizations we like. Social proof validates our maybe latent thinking without having to do the research. Authority, we tend to believe people who are in positions of authority, whether we should or not. Scarcity, there is this thing of fear of missing out, right? So we don't want to miss out on an opportunity that appears to be a good one. We are more inclined to chase after something because there appears to be few of those. And then the last one, commitment and consistency. We just inherently, I think as humans, we like to be consistent in what we say and what we do. So 5 takeaways for today. Define the purpose and identify those SMART objectives for engagement and use metrics to track your performance. Leverage research. It is time that pays a dividend, in my opinion. Define what makes your organization, your product, your service unique. If you're following the crowd, you're likely to get what the crowd gets. Identify what those stakeholders within your network are missing when they go to your competitors. How do you exploit that or take advantage of that? Identify strategies and tactics aligned with your objectives. And then the last one, planning, preparation, practice builds familiarity and confidence. So what I hope to help you feel more comfortable with is not so much about giving interviews. That's kind of the larger goal here, but it's more about engaging with the folks that you're trying to reach. And I think in this media environment where you have all these different channels, a lot of them digital, still print and broadcast out there, but you have a lot of options to choose from as a community leader, it's best to take a more targeted approach that is validated by data than simply doing what we did 10, 15 years ago, and that is we'd write a press release, we send it to PR Newswire, it'd go out to hundreds of newsrooms across the country, and we would get news, we would get coverage. But the ability to do that today is still there. PR Newswire is still around. Bloomberg, what's the other one? Business Wire is another prominent one. But it may not necessarily get your message to the folks that you're trying to reach, is my point. So the more you can use data and analytics and the research that goes along with that to validate who you're trying to reach and why, what the best platforms are, communications channels for you to do that are, the more likely you are to reach those folks who are going to engage with you.